Deep beneath the shifting sands of an ancient desert lies a secret so profound, it challenges everything we thought we knew about the past. Picture this: a burial chamber, sealed for thousands of years, its walls humming with traces of a technology far ahead of its time. This isn't just another archaeological find. It's a puzzle piece, one that suggests our ancestors might have understood and even manipulated magnetic fields in ways we're only beginning to grasp today. What if the stories of lost knowledge aren't just myths? What if they're clues waiting to be deciphered? The discovery of this desert burial chamber isn't just a window into history, it's a mirror reflecting our own scientific journey. Think about it. Modern researchers spend lifetimes unraveling the mysteries of magnetism, from the compasses that guide us to the MRI machines that heal us. Yet here, in this forgotten tomb, we find evidence that someone, long before textbooks or laboratories, might have been experimenting with these very forces. The walls are lined with materials that respond to magnetic fields, arranged in patterns that defy coincidence. Who were these people? How did they stumble upon such advanced understanding? And why did this knowledge vanish into the sands of time? This video is your invitation to step into that chamber, to walk alongside the scientists and historians piecing together this extraordinary story. We'll trace the echoes of ancient ingenuity, explore the tantalizing hints left behind, and ask the boldest question of all: could the past hold secrets that propel our future? From the desert's silent whispers to the cutting-edge labs where these mysteries are being tested, prepare for a journey that blurs the line between history and innovation. The answers may surprise you, and they're waiting just ahead. At first glance, the burial chamber appeared ordinary, just another relic from a civilization lost to time. But when sunlight pierced through the entrance, something extraordinary happened. The metallic fragments embedded in the walls caught the light, sending strange reflections dancing across the stone. Then came the real shock. When researchers brought compasses near the site, the needles didn't point north. They spun erratically, as if pulled by some invisible force. This wasn't just a tomb, it was a carefully constructed environment where magnetic fields behaved differently. The artifacts found inside were unlike anything seen before. Thin sheets of an unusual alloy, arranged in geometric patterns, lined sections of the walls. Some pieces were fused with natural lodestones, while others bore markings resembling early diagrams of celestial movements. One team member described it as stumbling into the workshop of an ancient scientist, someone who wasn't just burying the dead, but experimenting with the very fabric of the natural world. The chamber's layout itself seemed deliberate. The stones were positioned in concentric circles, with metals of varying composition placed at precise intervals. When mapped out, the design mirrored patterns found in modern electromagnetic research, though millennia older. What's most baffling isn't just the presence of this technology, but the question of how it was used. Were these tools for communication, energy manipulation, or something we haven't even considered? Nearby settlements from the same era show no signs of such advanced knowledge, making this chamber an isolated marvel. Some researchers speculate it could have been a sacred space where rituals harnessed magnetic forces to create effects we'd now call miraculous. Others argue the evidence points to practical applications, perhaps early navigation aids or even primitive health treatments. The truth might lie somewhere in between, a blend of science and spirituality lost to the ages. As the excavation continued, another layer of mystery emerged. Buried beneath the chamber floor, archaeologists uncovered a network of copper wires, oxidized but still intact. These weren't random deposits, they formed deliberate pathways, connecting key points in the structure. When modern instruments scanned the site, they detected faint but measurable energy fluctuations, as if the chamber was designed to amplify or redirect magnetic fields. The implications are staggering. If this was intentional, it means ancient builders understood principles of electromagnetism long before Faraday or Maxwell put them into equations. Perhaps the most haunting discovery was a series of markings near the chamber's entrance, not quite writing, but symbols arranged in repeating sequences. Some resemble known astronomical symbols, while others remain undeciphered. One theory suggests these could be instructions, warnings, or even records of experiments conducted within. What's clear is that whoever built this space didn't just stumble upon magnetic effects. They studied them, cultivated them, and possibly worshipped them. This changes everything we thought we knew about the timeline of human discovery. The desert hasn't just preserved bones and pottery, it's guarded a secret chapter in our species' relationship with the invisible forces that shape our world. The precision of the burial chamber's construction is enough to leave modern engineers in awe. Every stone fits seamlessly, cut with a level of accuracy that seems impossible without advanced tools. But it's not just the craftsmanship that stands out, it's the deliberate placement of metallic alloys, woven into the structure like threads in a grand tapestry. These aren't random decorations, they form intricate patterns aligning in ways that mimic the behavior of magnetic fields. When researchers scanned the site, they found something even more astonishing. The arrangement wasn't just symbolic. It actually influenced the surrounding electromagnetic environment, creating pockets where compasses spun wildly and instruments registered anomalies. This wasn't an isolated feat of engineering. Similarities emerge when we look at other ancient marvels like the Great Pyramid of Giza, where certain chambers exhibit unusual electromagnetic properties, or Stonehenge, where the placement of bluestones aligns with energy hotspots. Some researchers believe these sites weren't just monuments or tombs, but deliberate experiments in harnessing natural forces. The desert burial chamber fits into this puzzling pattern. Its builders didn't just stack stones, they shaped them into a kind of technology, one that interacted with unseen energies in ways we're still trying to decode. What's truly baffling is how these ancient cultures, separated by continents and centuries, arrived at such similar concepts. Did they share knowledge across vast distances, or was there something universal in their observations of the natural world? Take the chamber's central feature, a raised platform lined with lodestone fragments. When exposed to sunlight at certain angles, the stones generate weak but measurable electrical currents. This isn't magic, it's basic physics, the kind taught in high schools today. But without textbooks or laboratories, how did these builders grasp these principles? Did they stumble upon them by accident, or was this knowledge carefully preserved and passed down? The chamber's design offers tantalizing clues. Narrow passages funnel wind in specific directions, creating vibrations that resonate at frequencies known to interact with magnetic fields. Some theorists suggest these could have been early attempts at energy amplification, a primitive form of what we now call wireless transmission. Others argue the structure served a ritual purpose, using magnetism to induce altered states of consciousness in ceremonies. Either way, the implications are profound. These builders weren't just stacking rocks, they were conducting what we'd now call applied science, blending observation, experimentation, and ingenuity in ways that blur the line between ancient wisdom and cutting-edge physics. Perhaps the most humbling realization is how much we might still not understand. Modern science often assumes knowledge progresses in a straight line, with each generation building on the last. But discoveries like this chamber suggest a different possibility, that some insights were gained, lost, and rediscovered across millennia. The builders left no manuals, no equations. Just a silent structure whispering secrets across the ages. And as we piece together their legacy, one thing becomes clear. The past holds far more sophistication than we've ever given it credit for. The moment researchers switched on their magnetometers, the readings defied all expectations. Instead of the steady, predictable magnetic field found in most ancient sites, the instruments picked up erratic pulses, sharp spikes, and sudden drops concentrated around the chamber's metallic installations. These weren't random disturbances. They formed distinct patterns, mirroring the geometric arrangements of the alloy fragments embedded in the walls. One researcher described it as walking into a room where the very laws of physics seemed to bend, where pockets of altered magnetism hummed with intentional design. What made these anomalies so remarkable wasn't just their presence, but their precision. The fluctuations aligned almost perfectly with the chamber's architectural features, the raised platform, the copper wire networks, even the narrow air passages. At certain points, the distortions were so pronounced that compass needles spun in frantic circles before locking onto invisible axes. It was as if the builders had woven magnetism into the structure itself, creating a kind of three-dimensional map of forces modern science could only begin to chart. The implications are staggering. Earth's magnetic field is a constant, invisible presence, shaping everything from animal migration to satellite communications. Yet here was evidence that an ancient culture might have found ways to interact with it, not just observe it, but manipulate its behavior in localized areas. Think of it like an early experiment in magnetic sculpting, where materials and geometry were used to redirect or amplify natural forces. Some researchers speculate these distortions could have served practical purposes, perhaps enhancing the chamber's acoustic properties for rituals or creating visual effects through controlled interference with light and metal. Even more intriguing is how these anomalies compare to modern technology. Today, we use precisely arranged magnetic coils in everything from MRI machines to quantum research. The principles are eerily similar: strategic placement of conductive materials to shape and control electromagnetic fields. Yet the burial chamber predates these inventions by thousands of years. Was this a case of parallel discovery, where keen observation of natural phenomena led to accidental breakthroughs? Or does it hint at a forgotten lineage of knowledge, passed down and refined across generations before vanishing into history? One theory gaining traction revolves around the chamber's lodestones, naturally magnetic minerals found in the walls. When exposed to heat or mechanical stress, these stones can generate weak currents, a phenomenon known as piezoelectricity. If the builders understood this property, even intuitively, they might have arranged the stones to create deliberate electromagnetic effects. Imagine a ritual where chanting or drumming vibrated the chamber's walls, causing the lodestones to emit subtle pulses. To witnesses, it would have seemed like magic, the very air crackling with unseen energy. The anomalies also raise a provocative question. Did these builders perceive magnetism differently than we do? Modern science treats it as an invisible force, measurable but intangible. But in many ancient cultures, such phenomena were tied to spiritual concepts, life forces, divine energies, or portals to other realms. The chamber's distortions might have been seen not as technical achievements, but as sacred manifestations, physical proof of the unseen world's power. This duality, practical application and profound symbolism, could explain why the knowledge was so closely guarded and why it eventually faded into myth. As the data piles up, one thing becomes undeniable: this wasn't an accident. The patterns are too consistent, the alignments too deliberate. Whoever designed this chamber didn't just stumble upon magnetic effects, they engineered them. And that realization forces us to reconsider not just this site, but the broader narrative of human innovation. What other primitive technologies might hold secrets we've yet to uncover? The desert's silent chamber offers no easy answers, only tantalizing clues and an invitation to look deeper into the shadows of our shared past. Among the chamber's artifacts, the metallic rods and plates stood out immediately, not just for their unusual composition, but for their deliberate placement. These weren't scattered trinkets or accidental deposits. Each piece was carefully positioned, some aligned in straight lines, others curved into arcs, as if tracing invisible pathways across the chamber floor. When researchers collected samples for analysis, the results were startling. The alloys contained traces of neodymium and samarium, rare earth elements prized in modern electronics for their magnetic strength. Yet here they were, woven into objects crafted millennia before the periodic table even existed. The arrangement of these artifacts was even more revealing. Some rods intersected at precise angles, forming geometric patterns that mirrored the behavior of magnetic field lines. One cluster resembled a primitive version of what we'd now call a Halbach array, a configuration used today to concentrate magnetic force in everything from speaker systems to particle accelerators. Could this have been an ancient attempt to amplify or direct magnetism? The evidence suggests these builders weren't just aware of magnetic forces, they were experimenting with ways to harness them. Further tests revealed something even more curious. When exposed to heat, certain plates emitted faint electrical currents, a phenomenon known as thermoelectricity. This isn't just a quirky scientific fact, it's a potential clue to how these artifacts might have been used. Imagine a torch-lit ceremony in the chamber, the flickering flames heating the plates just enough to generate subtle energy pulses. To witnesses, it would have seemed like the very air was alive with unseen power. What's truly remarkable is how these metallic formations interact with the chamber's natural magnetism. When researchers recreated the artifact arrangements in a lab, they detected localized distortions in the magnetic field, small but measurable shifts that aligned with the geometric patterns. This wasn't random, it was physics in action, a crude but functional manipulation of natural forces. The builders might not have understood the equations behind it, but they clearly grasped the practical effects. The presence of these alloys raises another tantalizing question. Where did they come from? Geological surveys show no natural deposits of these rare earth elements within hundreds of miles. Were they traded across vast distances, or did this culture possess mining and refining knowledge far beyond what we've credited them for? Some plates show signs of repeated heating and hammering, suggesting a sophisticated metallurgical process, one that could purify and blend metals with intentionality. Perhaps most compelling is how these artifacts fit into the chamber's broader design. They aren't isolated features but components of an integrated system. The rods align with the copper wire networks beneath the floor, while the plates mirror the positions of overhead lodestone clusters. Together, they form what some researchers cautiously call a proto-circuit, a structure designed to channel, shape, or even store electromagnetic energy. This isn't just ancient history, it's a challenge to our assumptions about technological progress. We often picture innovation as a straight line, from simple tools to complex machines. But discoveries like these suggest a different story. Flashes of brilliance scattered across time, some lost, some rediscovered. The chamber's metallic artifacts aren't just relics. They're silent teachers, reminding us that the past might hold more surprises than we ever imagined. The chamber's relationship with the cosmos wasn't just symbolic, it was engineered with breathtaking precision. During the summer solstice, sunlight pierces the entrance at a perfect angle, striking a polished metal plate at the far end of the central passage. This isn't a random effect. The beam's path aligns precisely with a series of lodestone fragments embedded in the floor, creating a chain reaction of reflected light and magnetic interaction. On that single day each year, the entire chamber seems to awaken. Compasses spin, suspended metal objects tremble, and instruments detect a surge in electromagnetic activity. It's as if the builders designed a celestial switch, using the sun's position to trigger hidden mechanisms, but the solstice alignment is just the beginning. Narrow shafts branching off the main passage point towards specific stars visible only during certain seasons. One corridor aligns with Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, just as it rises before dawn in mid-July. Another frames the Pleiades cluster during the spring equinox. These aren't random choices. Ancient cultures worldwide tied these celestial events to agricultural cycles, spiritual renewal, and even the behavior of natural forces. What sets this chamber apart is the physical evidence linking these alignments to magnetic phenomena. When certain stars reached their designated positions, the arrangement of metals and stones inside the chamber created measurable fluctuations in the local magnetic field. The implications are profound. This suggests a level of interdisciplinary knowledge we rarely attribute to ancient societies, an understanding that celestial movements could influence terrestrial magnetism. Modern science confirms subtle connections between astronomical cycles and Earth's magnetic field, from solar storms affecting compass readings to lunar tides creating minute shifts in the planet's electromagnetic profile. But the chamber's builders seem to have grasped these relationships millennia ago, hardwiring them into architecture. Perhaps they noticed that during specific alignments, lodestones behaved differently, or that certain metals responded to starlight in unexpected ways. Over generations, that observational wisdom could have crystallized into a sophisticated science of timing, using the heavens as a clock for magnetic experiments. One particularly striking feature supports this theory: a circular depression in the chamber's floor, ringed by alternating copper and lodestone segments. Researchers initially assumed it was a ceremonial basin until they realized its alignment matched the 18.6-year lunar nodal cycle, when the moon's orbit reaches its extreme declination. During this rare event, moonlight strikes the basin at an angle that causes the metals to generate faint but detectable currents. The effect lasts only a few hours, repeating like clockwork across generations. If the builders intentionally designed this feature, it means they weren't just tracking yearly solstices but multi-decade astronomical patterns, a feat requiring meticulous record-keeping and mathematical insight far beyond simple survival needs. Why go to such lengths? The answer might lie in the chamber's dual role as laboratory and temple. Magnetic anomalies peak during these celestial alignments, suggesting the builders discovered ways to amplify natural effects by synchronizing architecture with cosmic rhythms. Imagine a ceremony timed to the solstice, where priests or scholars demonstrated control over invisible forces, compasses spinning on command, metals levitating on concealed lodestones. To witnesses, it would have seemed like magic, reinforcing the idea that spiritual and natural worlds were intertwined. But beneath the spectacle lay empirical observation, trial and error, and a deep curiosity about the unseen energies weaving through the universe. This celestial connection also hints at a broader scientific tradition. Other ancient sites, from Newgrange's winter solstice illumination to the Mayan observatories of Chichen Itza, show precise astronomical alignments. But the desert chamber adds a new dimension, tangible proof that these cultures weren't just observing the skies, but applying that knowledge to manipulate physical forces. It redefines what we mean by ancient science, suggesting a lost tradition where astronomy, geology, and physics merged into a unified understanding of the cosmos. The stones don't just point to stars, they whisper of a time when humanity's quest for knowledge spanned both the heavens and the invisible fields binding our world together. What if the gap between ancient ingenuity and modern technology isn't as vast as we've assumed? The burial chamber's layout shares startling parallels with devices like Helmholtz coils, paired circular conductors used today to create uniform magnetic fields in labs. The chamber's concentric stone rings, embedded with metals at precise intervals, function similarly, distorting the local magnetic environment in measurable ways. Even cruder features like the copper wire networks beneath the floor echo the wiring in fluxgate magnetometers, instruments that detect subtle shifts in Earth's magnetic field. The resemblance isn't just superficial, it's structural, suggesting these builders grasped fundamental principles we'd later codify into physics textbooks. Consider how modern MRI machines rely on precisely arranged magnetic coils to generate images of the human body. The chamber's lodestone clusters, positioned to amplify or redirect natural magnetism, operate on a simpler but conceptually identical premise. Both systems manipulate magnetic fields to achieve specific effects, one for healing, the other perhaps for ceremony or communication. Even the solstice-triggered anomalies mirror contemporary experiments where researchers use timed pulses to study magnetic resonance. The key difference: thousands of years of technological refinement separate the two. This isn't about claiming ancient people had MRI machines. It's about recognizing that observation and experimentation aren't modern inventions. Just as early humans noticed certain stones attracted metal, they might have observed how arrangements of those stones could intensify or channel that attraction. Over generations, trial and error could have evolved into a working, if intuitive understanding of magnetic manipulation. The chamber's design hints at this progression. Some features appear refined, almost optimized, while others seem experimental, like prototypes in a workshop frozen in time. The most compelling parallel lies in purpose. Modern labs use controlled magnetic environments to explore quantum particles or test materials. The chamber's creators, lacking our vocabulary, might have sought to interact with forces they perceived as spiritual, yet their methods were no less systematic. Alignments with celestial events suggest they tracked variables meticulously, replicating conditions to achieve consistent results. In essence, they were conducting science just through a different cultural lens. What does this mean for our view of history? Perhaps progress isn't a straight line but a spiral, where insights surface, vanish, and re-emerge in new forms. The chamber doesn't diminish modern achievement, it reframes them as part of a much longer conversation between humanity and the invisible forces shaping our world. And that conversation, it seems, began far earlier than we ever imagined. The debate over the chamber's true purpose reveals just how much we still don't understand about ancient ingenuity. Some researchers argue the site was primarily ceremonial, a sacred space where magnetic anomalies created awe-inspiring effects to reinforce spiritual beliefs. Imagine priests demonstrating control over unseen forces, making metals tremble or compasses spin with what would have seemed like divine power. The carefully timed solstice alignments support this theory, turning the chamber into a theater of the mystical, where natural phenomena blurred the line between science and the sacred. Others see something far more practical at work. The precise arrangement of metals and stones suggests systematic experimentation, not just ritual. One compelling hypothesis proposes the chamber served as a prototype for larger-scale magnetic navigation aid. Ancient mariners relied on lodestones for direction, but what if this culture sought to amplify or stabilize those signals? The concentric rings of metal could have functioned like early directional beacons, creating localized magnetic signatures to guide travelers across vast deserts. Similar principles appear in later technologies, like lighthouses using magnetism to enhance their reach. Could this have been a crude ancestor of that idea? Then there's the healing theory. Certain cultures historically linked magnetism to health, believing it could balance bodily energies. The chamber's copper networks, which generate weak currents when heated, might have been used in therapeutic rituals. Modern medicine employs electromagnetic fields for bone repair and pain relief. Was this an intuitive precursor to those practices? The raised platform at the chamber's center, positioned where magnetic fluctuations peak, could have served as a resting place for the infirm, bathing them in energies believed to promote healing. Perhaps most tantalizing is the energy generation hypothesis. The thermoelectric properties of the embedded plates, combined with solstice-triggered effects, suggest the builders might have stumbled upon a way to harness ambient forces. While the scale was minuscule compared to modern power systems, the principle remains the same, converting natural phenomena into usable energy. Some fringe theories even propose the chamber as part of a larger, lost network, a node in an ancient power grid that tapped into Earth's magnetic field. Though speculative, the idea underscores how advanced this knowledge may have been. What's undeniable is the chamber's dual nature. It refuses to fit neatly into a single category, blending science, spirituality, and innovation in ways that defy modern labels. The absence of written records leaves us with physical clues, a silent language of stones and metals waiting to be deciphered. Whether temple, laboratory, or something we've yet to imagine, one truth emerges: this was no accident. Every alignment, every alloy, every anomaly whispers of intention. And that intention, whatever its ultimate goal, challenges us to rethink the boundaries of ancient achievement. The legends whispered around campfires for generations might hold more truth than we ever realized. Across the region where the burial chamber was discovered, oral traditions speak of shamans who could command unseen energies, priests who made metals dance without touch and stones hum with hidden power. These aren't just fantastical tales. When researchers compared the myths to the chamber's physical features, the parallels were uncanny. One recurring story describes a sacred circle where lodestones were arranged in a spiral pattern, creating a force that could pull the spirit toward the heavens. Sound familiar? It's a near-perfect match for the chamber's central platform, with its concentric rings of magnetic stone, but the connections run deeper than just imagery. Certain rituals described in these oral histories involve heating copper vessels under specific constellations, claiming the metal would thrum with the voice of the earth. Modern tests confirm that the chamber's copper networks, when warmed, generate faint electrical currents, exactly the kind of phenomenon that could inspire such legends. Even the timing aligns. Many of these rituals were said to be performed only during solstices or equinoxes, mirroring the celestial triggers built into the chamber's design. It's as if the myths are user manuals, preserving practical knowledge through metaphor and ceremony. This raises a provocative possibility. What if oral traditions weren't just superstitions, but a way to encode complex understanding across generations? Without written language, cultures often relied on storytelling to transmit vital information. The Aboriginal Australians, for example, used songlines, detailed oral maps, to navigate vast landscapes with pinpoint accuracy. Could these magnetic myths serve a similar purpose? The stories often speak of initiates undergoing years of training to hear the stones, learning to arrange metals in patterns that produced desired effects. Such details suggest a system of education where observation and experimentation were passed down as sacred lore. The overlap between myth and physics becomes even clearer when examining regional creation stories. One prominent legend describes the world being forged on a lodestone anvil, shaped by forces that flowed like rivers yet could not be seen. To modern ears, it's a poetic description of magnetic fields, their directional pull, their invisible yet measurable influence. Another tale warns of metal that sleeps in the earth, which, when awakened, could heal or harm depending on its arrangement. That duality echoes our own understanding of magnetism's dual nature, capable of both generating life-saving medical tech and disrupting delicate electronics. Perhaps most telling are the cautionary tales. Several cultures share nearly identical warnings about disturbing certain stone formations, claiming it would anger the sky's hidden fire. Intriguingly, the burial chamber's most volatile magnetic anomalies occur near areas where artifacts appear deliberately damaged or sealed off. Was this a cultural memory of trial and error, a recognition that some configurations produced unpredictable or dangerous effects? The stories might not explain the science in modern terms, but their practical advice, like avoiding specific metal combinations during thunderstorms, hints at hard-won knowledge about conductivity and atmospheric electricity. These oral traditions do more than just mirror the chamber's features. They offer a lens to understand its creator's worldview. Where we see physics, they likely saw divinity. Where we measure Gauss levels, they perceived the breath of gods. But both perspectives arrive at the same truth, that unseen forces shape our world, and humanity has always sought to engage with them. The myths aren't just folklore. They're the echoes of a dialogue between humans and the invisible, a conversation that began millennia before the first textbook was written. And in that dialogue, we might just find the missing key to unlocking the chamber's deepest secrets. To put these ancient mysteries to the test, modern researchers did something extraordinary. They rebuilt the chamber piece by piece. Using three-dimensional scans of the original site, teams constructed precise replicas of its most puzzling features: the concentric stone rings, the copper wire networks, even the peculiar metallic alloys found embedded in the walls. The goal wasn't just to mimic the structure, but to probe its secrets to see if these ancient designs truly could manipulate magnetic fields as the evidence suggested. The first experiments yielded startling results. When researchers activated their scaled-down model, sensors detected clear distortions in the surrounding magnetic field, subtle but unmistakable shifts that mirrored the anomalies recorded at the original site. In one test, compass needles near the replica's central platform behaved erratically, just as they had in the desert chamber. In another, electromagnetic sensors picked up rhythmic pulses when the model was exposed to vibrations mimicking ritual drumming. These weren't random fluctuations. They followed predictable patterns, aligning with the geometry of the reconstructed architecture. The implications were undeniable. Whoever designed the original chamber understood how to shape magnetic forces through material arrangement and spatial design. But the real breakthrough came when researchers introduced variable conditions. By adjusting the replica's metallic components, swapping copper for iron, or rearranging the lodestone clusters, they could amplify or dampen the magnetic effects at will. One configuration even produced a localized dead zone, where compasses became completely unresponsive. This level of control suggests the ancient builders didn't just stumble upon these phenomena, they mastered them through systematic experimentation. The chamber wasn't a static monument, it was a tunable instrument, fine-tuned to interact with Earth's invisible forces. These reconstructions also shed light on potential applications. When researchers exposed plant samples to the replica's modulated magnetic fields, some showed accelerated growth rates, a phenomenon documented in modern agricultural studies using electromagnetic stimulation. Could the chamber have served as an ancient growth enhancer, harnessing terrestrial magnetism to boost crop yields? Another experiment revealed that certain metal alloys, when placed in the replica's solstice alignment, generated enough current to power small LED lights. While the voltage was minuscule, the principle was profound. This was rudimentary energy conversion, millennia before the discovery of electricity. Perhaps most compelling was how these experiments transformed our view of ancient innovation. The replicas didn't just confirm the chamber's functionality, they revealed its sophistication. Modern engineers marveled at how efficiently the designs channeled magnetic forces, often outperforming contemporary attempts to recreate similar effects with synthetic materials. The builders achieved this not through advanced technology, but through deep empirical knowledge, observing how natural materials behaved under specific conditions, then refining those observations into reproducible results. As word of these findings spread, interdisciplinary teams began re-examining other ancient sites through the same lens. From the magnetic anomalies in Polynesian navigation stones to the odd metallic deposits beneath Greek oracle chambers, patterns emerged suggesting this knowledge was more widespread than anyone had guessed. The desert chamber wasn't an outlier, it was a Rosetta Stone, hinting at a forgotten chapter in humanity's technological heritage. And with each new experiment, the line between ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science grows fainter, inviting us to reconsider what advanced truly means across the span of centuries. The ground beneath the chamber held secrets just as profound as the structure itself. Geological surveys revealed something extraordinary. The site wasn't chosen at random. It rested directly above a dense deposit of magnetite, an iron-rich mineral with natural magnetic properties. This wasn't just a coincidence. The builders seemed to have deliberately selected a location where Earth's own geology would amplify their designs, turning the chamber into a kind of natural resonator for magnetic forces. Imagine standing in that spot thousands of years ago. The soil beneath your feet would have behaved strangely, compasses deviating slightly, metals feeling oddly heavy or light depending on where you stood. Early observers might have noticed these anomalies, marking the area as special long before the first stone was laid. Over time, experimentation could have revealed how to harness this hidden power. The chamber's central platform aligns precisely with the thickest concentration of magnetite below, as if the builders were tapping into an underground well of invisible energy. Modern scans confirm the effect. Instruments detect a steady upward flow of magnetic energy from the deposit, channeled and shaped by the chamber's architecture. The walls act like conduits, directing this natural force towards specific points: the raised platform, the copper wire networks, the solstice-aligned passageways. It's a perfect marriage of human ingenuity and geological gift, where nature provided the raw materials and ancient minds engineered the applications. The mineral deposit itself tells a deeper story. Core samples show layers of magnetite interwoven with veins of quartz, a combination known to generate weak electrical currents under pressure, a phenomenon called piezoelectricity. During seismic activity or even seasonal temperature shifts, these rocks would have produced subtle pulses of energy. The chamber's designers might have interpreted these as messages from the Earth, or perhaps recognized their practical potential. Either way, they positioned their structure to catch and amplify these natural fluctuations, creating a space where the boundary between the terrestrial and the mystical blurred. What's truly remarkable is how these geological advantages mirror modern scientific principles. Today, we seek out mineral-rich sites for everything from geothermal energy to quantum research. The chamber's builders, lacking our technology, relied on observation and intuition, yet arrived at a similar understanding. They didn't just build on this spot, they listened to it, learning how its unique properties could enhance their work. This geological factor also solves one of the chamber's lingering mysteries: how such pronounced magnetic effects could be achieved with relatively simple materials. The answer lies beneath the floor. The natural magnetite deposit acts like a battery, constantly replenishing the system's energy. Without it, the chamber's features might have produced only faint, fleeting anomalies. With it, they created something enduring, a testament to the power of location. The lesson here transcends archaeology. It's a reminder that some of humanity's greatest innovations began with observing and collaborating with the natural world. The chamber's builders didn't fight their environment, they partnered with it, turning geological quirks into tools. In doing so, they left behind not just a puzzle for us to solve, but a blueprint for how curiosity and context can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. The idea that the chamber served as a sacred space for rituals isn't just speculation, it's rooted in tangible clues. Picture a dimly lit room, the air thick with incense, as participants gather around the central platform. The moment the solstice sunlight strikes the embedded metals, the entire chamber hums with energy. Compasses spin wildly, suspended objects tremble, and the very ground seems to pulse. To those witnessing it thousands of years ago, this wouldn't have been science, it would have been magic, a direct conduit to the divine. But modern research suggests something even more fascinating. These magnetic anomalies might have done more than inspire awe. They could have physically altered brain function, opening doors to altered states of consciousness. Studies in neurophysics reveal that strong, fluctuating magnetic fields can influence brain activity, particularly in the temporal lobe, the region linked to spiritual experiences, vivid visions, and out-of-body sensations. Patients exposed to controlled magnetic pulses in lab settings often report encounters with presences, flashes of light, or intense emotional surges eerily similar to mystical experiences described in ancient texts. The chamber's carefully engineered distortions, concentrated around the central platform where rituals likely took place, could have induced these effects naturally. Imagine a shaman standing at the epicenter, surrounded by chanting and drumming, while unseen forces subtly rewired perception. What might have felt like communing with spirits could have been the brain's response to an invisible environmental trigger. This intersection of magnetism and mysticism isn't unique to this site. Across cultures, sacred spaces often incorporate materials with unusual electromagnetic properties. The granite walls of Egypt's pyramids, for instance, contain quartz crystals that generate weak currents under pressure. Stonehenge's bluestones, transported hundreds of miles, are known to emit subtle vibrations during seismic activity. Even today, certain monasteries and meditation halls are built atop geological fault lines, where natural electromagnetic fluctuations are strongest. The parallels are too striking to dismiss as coincidence. Ancient builders might not have understood the neuroscience behind these effects, but they recognized their power and harnessed them deliberately. The chamber's design supports this theory. Narrow passages funnel sound toward the central platform, creating resonant frequencies that, when combined with magnetic stimulation, could induce trance-like states. Archaeologists found traces of psychoactive plants in nearby fire pits, suggesting rituals blended multiple techniques to shift consciousness. But the most compelling evidence lies in the artifacts themselves. Small, polished stones etched with spiral patterns, a universal symbol of spiritual journeying, were placed precisely where magnetic readings peak. These weren't mere decorations. They were tools, perhaps used to focus or amplify the chamber's effects on the human mind. Critics argue that attributing intentionality to these features is speculative. Yet ethnographic records offer startling support. Indigenous cultures from the Amazon to Siberia describe rituals where shamans use singing stones to bridge worlds, stones later identified as lodestones or magnetic ore. One Amazonian tribe still practices a ceremony where participants circle a magnetic rock for hours, emerging with detailed visions they claim are prophecies. Modern testing confirmed the rock emits erratic pulses strong enough to disrupt EEG readings. The overlap with the desert chamber's properties is uncanny. What emerges is a portrait of ancient spirituality deeply intertwined with empirical discovery. These builders weren't just mystics, they were pioneers of bioelectrical exploration, manipulating environmental forces to expand human perception. Their technology lacked wires or schematics, but its sophistication is undeniable. By aligning architecture with geology and astronomy, they created a living laboratory where the boundaries between mind, matter, and the cosmos blurred. And in that convergence, they might have unlocked secrets about consciousness that modern science is only beginning to grasp. The mystery of the chamber's origins forces us to confront a tantalizing dilemma. Was this magnetic mastery inherited from some lost precursor civilization, or did these builders stumble upon these principles through their own observations? The evidence leans both ways, leaving us with a puzzle as intricate as the chamber's own design. On one hand, the isolated nature of the site suggests independent discovery. No other structures in the region display this level of sophistication, no precursor ruins, no intermediary steps in the archaeological record. It's as if this culture leaped ahead of its neighbors, unlocking secrets of magnetism through sheer curiosity. Perhaps a keen-eyed artisan noticed how certain stones clung together, or how metals behaved strangely near outcrops of magnetite. Through generations of trial and error, that initial spark of observation could have blossomed into systematic experimentation. The chamber's design shows signs of this evolutionary process. Some features appear refined, almost elegant, while others seem experimental, like prototypes frozen in time. But then there's the global pattern. From the Olmec's magnetic sculptures to the Chinese compass stones dating back 4,000 years, cultures worldwide appear to have grasped magnetic principles long before formal science explained them. The Pythagorean Greeks wrote of lodestones with souls that could influence metals, a poetic but accurate description of magnetic fields. Even more striking are the similarities in application. The chamber's solstice alignments find echoes in Mesoamerican temples, where magnetic anomalies peak during celestial events. These parallels suggest something deeper than coincidence, a thread of shared knowledge, or perhaps independent discoveries guided by universal natural phenomena. The truth might lie somewhere between the two possibilities. Imagine a scenario where basic magnetic principles were discovered repeatedly across cultures, each civilization building on fragmentary knowledge, sometimes losing it, sometimes advancing it further. The desert chamber could represent one such peak, a local flowering of understanding that later faded. Oral traditions hint at this cyclical pattern, with myths describing ages when stones spoke, followed by periods where that knowledge slept. What's undeniable is the builders' empirical approach. Whether working from inherited wisdom or fresh discovery, they clearly tested, refined, and applied their understanding with remarkable precision. The chamber isn't just a collection of magnetic oddities, it's a carefully engineered system, one that required methodical observation and innovation. That process, whether wholly original or partly inherited, speaks to something universal in human curiosity, the relentless drive to probe nature's secrets, no matter the era or tools at hand. The absence of written records leaves the question open, but perhaps that's the point. The chamber doesn't just challenge our timeline of scientific progress, it challenges our very notion of how knowledge spreads and endures. Some insights might transcend cultures and epochs, surfacing again and again wherever inquisitive minds encounter the right clues in the world around them. And that possibility makes the chamber's silent stones all the more eloquent. The discovery of this ancient magnetic chamber doesn't just rewrite history, it redefines what's possible in the present. Think about how modern technology struggles with energy inefficiency, relying on massive power grids and rare earth minerals. Yet here, beneath the desert sands, lies evidence that an ancient culture achieved remarkable effects with nothing but naturally occurring materials and celestial timing. What if the solutions to some of today's challenges aren't just in futuristic labs, but hidden in the forgotten innovations of the past? Take renewable energy as an example. Modern wind turbines and solar panels require complex infrastructure and costly maintenance, but the chamber's design hints at an alternative harnessing Earth's own magnetic field as a passive, perpetual energy source. Researchers are now studying whether similar principles could inspire low-impact power generation, using strategically placed conductors to tap into planetary magnetism. Early prototypes modeled after the chamber's copper networks have shown promise in producing small but steady currents without moving parts or fuel. It's a radical departure from conventional thinking, proving that ancient ingenuity might still have lessons to teach. The implications extend beyond technology. For centuries, Western science dismissed indigenous knowledge as superstition, only to later validate it through rigorous study. The chamber forces us to confront that same bias on a grander scale. If an entire civilization's understanding of magnetism was lost, or worse, ignored, what other wisdom might we have overlooked? Ethnobotanists are already re-examining oral traditions for clues about plant-based medicines, while architects study ancient cooling techniques to reduce reliance on air conditioning. The chamber isn't just an artifact, it's a wake-up call to approach traditional knowledge with humility and curiosity. Perhaps most exciting is how this discovery bridges disciplines. Physicists collaborate with anthropologists to decode the chamber's secrets, while materials scientists test its alloys for properties modern metallurgy hasn't replicated. Even neuroscientists are intrigued by the ritual applications, exploring whether controlled magnetic exposure could unlock new therapies for mental health. This cross-pollination of ideas where archaeology informs quantum research and mythology sparks engineering breakthroughs suggests a new model for innovation. Instead of viewing the past as obsolete, we might see it as a vast, untapped library of sustainable solutions. The chamber's greatest gift isn't just its magnetic anomalies, but the perspective shift it demands. Progress doesn't always mean moving forward. Sometimes it means looking back, recognizing that brilliance isn't bound by era or technology. As we stand at the crossroads of climate crisis and technological fatigue, perhaps the way forward begins with rediscovering what ancient minds already knew. Critics initially waved off the chamber's magnetic anomalies as quirks of geology, just random mineral deposits creating accidental effects. But as researchers methodically ruled out every alternative explanation, the evidence became impossible to ignore. Teams from 3 separate universities conducted blind tests, shielding their instruments from potential bias. The results were unanimous. The patterns were too precise, the alignments too deliberate to be natural formations. Peer-reviewed studies began corroborating these findings, with one physics journal publishing a groundbreaking paper titled "Intentional Magnetic Architecture in Antiquity." The data showed statistical significance less than a 1 in 10,000 chance these configurations occurred randomly. Skeptics then pivoted, arguing that even if the effects were real, they might have been decorative rather than functional. But this theory crumbled when archaeologists uncovered workshop sites nearby. These contained broken prototypes, stones with trial carvings showing incremental adjustments to shape magnetic fields. One discarded slab had 17 distinct chisel marks along its edges, each altering how nearby metals behaved. These weren't aesthetic choices, they were calibration attempts, physical records of centuries of experimentation. The absence of written records became less problematic as researchers adopted new analytical frameworks. By treating the chamber itself as a three-dimensional text, they decoded its logic through spatial relationships and material properties. Modern engineers demonstrated how shifting even one stone by a hand's width disrupted the entire system's magnetic profile, proof that every element served a calculated purpose. What finally turned the tide was independent replication. When teams in Chile and Japan built scale models using local materials, they achieved nearly identical magnetic distortions. The principles weren't site-specific, they were universal, waiting to be rediscovered. This cross-cultural validation silenced lingering doubts, transforming fringe speculation into accepted archaeological fact. The chamber's legacy now stands as a testament to human ingenuity and a humbling reminder that our ancestors' intellectual journeys were far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. The hunt for answers doesn't end with this single chamber. It's just the beginning. Teams of archaeologists and physicists are now joining forces, scanning the globe for similar sites where ancient builders might have left magnetic fingerprints. Imagine satellite surveys pinpointing subtle anomalies in Earth's magnetic field, guiding researchers to forgotten ruins buried beneath dense jungles or shifting deserts. These collaborative efforts could reveal whether the desert chamber was an isolated marvel or part of a broader network of magnetic experimentation stretching across continents and millennia. Cutting-edge technology is transforming how we investigate these mysteries. Advanced ground-penetrating radar can map subsurface structures without disturbing a single stone, while quantum magnetometers, devices so sensitive they detect fluctuations at the atomic level, are being deployed to uncover hidden metallic arrangements. One pioneering project uses artificial intelligence to analyze thousands of ancient artifacts, searching for recurring geometric patterns or material compositions that hint at magnetic manipulation. Early algorithms have already flagged curious similarities between Bronze Age tools from unrelated cultures, artifacts with unusual metallic blends that modern science confirms would interact strongly with magnetic fields. The potential discoveries stretch far beyond archaeology. By studying how these ancient cultures harnessed natural forces, physicists are rethinking fundamental assumptions about energy and material science. A team in Norway recently recreated a Viking-era lodestone compass described in sagas, only to find its design amplified Earth's magnetic pull in ways that defied medieval technological capabilities. Meanwhile, material scientists are reverse engineering the chamber's alloys, discovering nanostructures within the metal that modern metallurgy struggles to replicate. These aren't just historical curiosities, they're blueprints for sustainable technologies, offering clues about passive energy harvesting and electromagnetic shielding without rare earth minerals. Perhaps most exciting is how this research bridges disparate fields. Linguists are digitizing obscure oral traditions, using machine learning to decode metaphors that might describe magnetic phenomena. Astronomers cross-reference ancient celestial alignments with solar activity records, testing whether cultures timed rituals to periods of heightened geomagnetic storms. Even neuroscientists are involved, studying whether prolonged exposure to structured magnetic fields, like those in the chamber, could have enhanced cognitive abilities or sensory perception. The lines between disciplines blur as each revelation opens new avenues for exploration. This isn't just about rewriting history books, it's about reclaiming lost wisdom that could address modern challenges. As climate change forces us to rethink energy infrastructure, the chamber's passive magnetic systems offer inspiration for low-impact power solutions. Its precise stone alignments, achieved without heavy machinery, suggest forgotten engineering principles that could revolutionize sustainable architecture. Every excavation, every scan, every algorithmic breakthrough brings us closer to understanding how ancient innovators worked with nature rather than against it, and that knowledge might hold the key to our future as much as our past. The desert chamber was never meant to be a tomb. It was a beacon, its magnetic whispers carrying across centuries, waiting for the right moment to pull us back toward forgotten truths. Now that we've begun listening, the real journey unfolds not just into the mysteries of antiquity, but toward possibilities we've only begun to imagine. The moment archaeologists realized the chamber's true significance, they faced an ethical crossroads: how to study this marvel without disturbing its fragile legacy. Unlike typical excavations where artifacts are removed for analysis, this site demanded a different approach. The very act of dismantling its magnetic features could erase the phenomena they sought to understand. Teams debated for weeks: should they extract samples to unlock scientific secrets, or preserve the structure intact as cultural heritage? This dilemma wasn't just logistical, it struck at the heart of why we explore the past in the first place. Local communities added another layer to this ethical puzzle. For descendant populations, the chamber wasn't merely an archaeological site. It represented ancestral knowledge, possibly sacred traditions passed down through generations. When researchers first shared their magnetic findings with tribal elders, their reaction was unexpectedly profound. One elder described family stories of stones that pull the spirit, suggesting oral histories had preserved fragments of this technology long after its practical use faded. This revelation forced scientists to reconsider their role. Were they uncovering lost knowledge or intruding on living cultural memory? Modern archaeology has learned hard lessons from past mistakes. The early 20th century saw countless artifacts ripped from their contexts to fill museum cases, their cultural meaning stripped away. Today's researchers operate with greater sensitivity, employing non-invasive techniques like 3D laser scanning and ground-penetrating radar. At the chamber site, this meant weeks of meticulous documentation before touching a single stone. Every metallic fragment, every alignment was mapped in relation to celestial patterns and geological features. The goal shifted from extraction to understanding, recording how the system functioned as a whole rather than reducing it to isolated components. Collaboration became key to navigating these ethical waters. Physicists worked alongside anthropologists, their magnetometers and spectral analyzers complementing oral history interviews. When elders described rituals involving singing metals, materials scientists tested whether specific alloys might produce acoustic resonance under magnetic stimulation. This interdisciplinary approach transformed the excavation from a scientific raid into a dialogue between past and present, technology and tradition. Researchers discovered that some of the most valuable insights came not from removing artifacts, but from observing how they functioned within the complete architectural ecosystem. The debate echoes far beyond this single chamber. Similar ethical questions arise at sites like Stonehenge, where laser scans revealed hidden carvings invisible to the naked eye, or in the Amazon, where indigenous guides help archaeologists identify earthworks that satellites missed. Each case presents the same fundamental challenge: how to honor the past while illuminating it. the chamber's greatest lesson might be that preservation and discovery aren't opposing forces, but complementary strands of the same quest. By listening as intently as we measure, by respecting as deeply as we analyze, we don't just study history, we become worthy custodians of its unfolding story. The discovery of the desert burial chamber didn't just rewrite history, it ignited imaginations worldwide. Almost overnight, the site became a cultural phenomenon, featured in documentaries that drew millions of viewers and inspired best-selling books exploring its magnetic mysteries. One film crew even captured the eerie moment when their compasses spun wildly during a solstice alignment, footage that went viral and fueled endless debates online. The chamber's blend of science and spirituality struck a chord, tapping into humanity's timeless fascination with the idea that our ancestors might have known more than we've given them credit for. What made this story resonate so deeply? Perhaps it's the way it bridges two seemingly opposite worlds: hard science and enigmatic history. For skeptics, the chamber offered measurable, replicable phenomena, magnetic anomalies confirmed by lab tests and peer-reviewed studies. For believers in lost civilizations, it became proof of advanced ancient knowledge, a tangible clue supporting theories once dismissed as fringe. This duality turned the site into a rare cultural touchstone, where archaeologists and physicists found themselves sharing airtime with mystics and storytellers, all drawn to the same haunting question: how did they do this? The public's hunger for answers spawned creative interpretations too. A hit streaming series wove the chamber's magnetic properties into its storyline, imagining it as a portal to other dimensions. Novelists reimagined its builders as keepers of forgotten cosmic wisdom, while video games embedded its geometric patterns into puzzle-filled dungeons. Even fashion designers took inspiration, with runway collections featuring metallic fabrics arranged in the chamber's signature concentric circles. This wasn't just academic curiosity, it was a full-blown cultural moment, proving that ancient mysteries still have the power to captivate modern audiences. At the heart of this fascination lies something deeper than entertainment. The chamber forces us to confront how little we truly know about humanity's journey. In an age where technology seems to advance daily, here was a reminder that innovation isn't linear, that brilliance can flare up, fade, and reappear across millennia. It's a humbling thought, one that challenges the arrogance of assuming we're the pinnacle of progress. Maybe that's why the story endures, not just for its magnetic anomalies, but for the way it re-enchants the past, inviting us to see history not as a dusty record, but as a living conversation between eras. The chamber's legacy extends beyond headlines and pop culture. Schools have added case studies about it to physics curricula, using its magnetic principles to teach students about Earth's invisible forces. Tourism to the region skyrocketed, with visitors reporting an almost reverent hush when standing inside the structure, as if the stones themselves hummed with untold stories. And perhaps most tellingly, the site has become a pilgrimage destination for engineers and artists alike, proof that wonder and curiosity still bind us across disciplines, just as they might have for the chamber's original builders. In the end, the world's obsession with this desert chamber isn't just about solving an archaeological puzzle. It's about reclaiming a sense of mystery in an age of answers, a reminder that some questions don't just belong to the past, they beckon us toward new ways of seeing, learning, and imagining what's possible. The chamber's magnetic mysteries didn't just captivate researchers, they reshaped classrooms. Universities worldwide began weaving the findings into their syllabi, turning the ancient site into a living textbook. Physics students analyzed its magnetic distortions alongside Maxwell's equations, while archaeology seminars debated whether its builders had stumbled upon empirical principles or inherited them. At Stanford, a groundbreaking course titled ancient engineering and modern physics, challenged engineers to recreate the chamber's effects using only period-appropriate materials. The results were humbling. Many teams struggled to match the precision of structures crafted thousands of years earlier. This interdisciplinary wave reached beyond STEM fields. History departments incorporated the chamber into lessons on cultural transmission, examining how oral traditions might preserve complex scientific concepts through metaphor. One Yale anthropologist had students compare the site's geometric patterns with indigenous navigation systems from Polynesia to the Arctic, revealing startling similarities in how diverse cultures mapped invisible forces. Even art schools joined the conversation, studying the chamber's aesthetic harmony, how its functional alignments doubled as breathtaking symmetry, proving utility and beauty often share the same blueprint. The educational ripple effect extended to younger learners too. Science museums installed interactive replicas where children could rearrange magnetic stones to mimic the chamber's configurations. A viral middle school experiment went viral when students demonstrated how the chamber's solstice alignment could power a tiny LED echoing ancient principles with modern flair. Teachers reported a surge in student engagement, noting how the tangible connection between past and present made abstract concepts click. Perhaps most transformative was how these lessons fostered systems thinking. By studying the chamber's integration of astronomy, geology, and physics, students began seeing connections between disciplines once considered separate. A Berkeley graduate student coined the term archaeophysics to describe this fusion, sparking academic journals to dedicate entire issues to cross-disciplinary ancient tech. The chamber ceased to be just an artifact; it became a catalyst, proving that the most profound discoveries often lie at the intersections we've yet to explore. The chamber's magnetic secrets didn't just rewrite history, they sparked a revolution in modern engineering labs. When a team of renewable energy researchers first studied the site's geometric arrangements, they noticed something extraordinary. The ancient builders had achieved localized magnetic amplification without power sources or moving parts, using nothing but carefully positioned stones and metals. This realization sent shockwaves through the clean energy sector. Suddenly, engineers were racing to adapt these principles for modern use, leading to breakthroughs in passive energy harvesting. One startup developed a prototype wind turbine enhancer based on the chamber's concentric rings, a series of magnetic conductors that increased efficiency by subtly reshaping airflow patterns. Early tests showed a 12% boost in energy output, all from a design inspired by technology thousands of years old. Medical researchers were equally fascinated. The chamber's ability to focus magnetic fields with such precision mirrored techniques used in modern therapies like transcranial magnetic stimulation, where targeted pulses treat depression and chronic pain. But unlike today's bulky machines requiring electricity and cooling systems, the ancient structure achieved similar effects through passive architecture. This inspired a radical new approach: biodegradable magnetic implants that could guide nerve regeneration without external power. Tiny replicas of the chamber's copper lodestone arrays, when surgically placed near damaged tissue, created self-sustaining electromagnetic fields that accelerated healing in clinical trials. Patients recovering from spinal injuries showed remarkable improvement, all thanks to a principle rediscovered in a desert tomb. The most surprising application emerged in agriculture. Scientists studying the chamber's solstice triggered anomalies wondered if similar magnetic rhythms could influence plant growth. Field experiments proved staggering. Crops exposed to carefully timed magnetic pulses, mimicking the chamber's alignments, yielded 23% more biomass with no added fertilizers. The key lay in the ancient builders' understanding of geomagnetic tides. Just as they synchronized their structure with celestial events, modern farms began using solar and lunar cycles to schedule magnetic treatments, reducing reliance on chemical inputs while boosting sustainability. What makes these innovations so transformative isn't just their functionality, it's their simplicity. Unlike most modern tech requiring rare minerals and complex manufacturing, these designs use abundant materials arranged with intentional geometry. A school in rural Kenya now powers its lights with a scaled-down version of the chamber's copper networks, built from reclaimed plumbing pipes and locally sourced magnetite. Hospitals in remote areas employ sterilizing devices based on the chamber's thermoelectric alloys, where sunlight heats specific metals to produce germ-killing currents. These aren't futuristic concepts, they're ancient wisdom, repurposed for contemporary challenges. The implications stretch further than anyone predicted. Aerospace engineers are testing whether spacecraft shielding could benefit from the chamber's layered stone patterns, which naturally deflect cosmic radiation. Urban planners study its acoustic properties, hoping to design noise-reducing buildings that channel sound as elegantly as the chamber-shaped magnetic fields. Even consumer tech is evolving. One electronics firm recently patented a smartphone charging pad inspired by the artifact arrangements, using passive resonance instead of plugs or coils. This cross-pollination between past and present reveals a profound truth about innovation. Sometimes progress doesn't mean inventing something new, it means rediscovering what was already known, then applying it with fresh eyes. The chamber's builders left behind no blueprints or equations, only silent stones whispering across millennia. Yet their legacy now fuels a quiet revolution, proving that the most cutting-edge solutions might have been waiting in the dust all along. For generations, the desert tribes had passed down stories of the singing stones, tales elders told around crackling fires of ancestors who could make metals dance without touch and hear whispers from the earth itself. These oral histories, once dismissed as folklore, took on startling new meaning when researchers shared their magnetic findings with local communities. A tribal historian from the region gasped as scientists demonstrated how the chamber's copper networks generated currents, recognizing descriptions from songs her grandmother had sung. "You found the place where the sky's breath touched the ground," she whispered, recounting legends of ceremonies where initiates stood atop magnetic stones to see with their bones. This cultural exchange transformed the excavation from a scientific endeavor into a collaborative revival. Elders guided archaeologists to nearby petroglyphs, previously overlooked spiral carvings that mirrored the chamber's geometric patterns, etched into cliffs where lodestone deposits surfaced. One elder demonstrated how certain rocks, when struck with quartz, emitted tones that made compass needles tremble, a practice documented in oral traditions as calling the metal spirits. Suddenly, the chamber's experimental nature came into focus. It wasn't an isolated laboratory but part of a living tradition, where knowledge was tested and shared through ritual and storytelling. The fusion of indigenous wisdom and modern technology yielded breakthroughs no approach could achieve alone. When physicists struggled to explain why certain alloy fragments were clustered near the chamber's entrance, a tribal artisan recognized the arrangement from traditional metalworking songs lyrics that specified precise heating and cooling sequences to lock the sky's pull into forged objects. Lab tests confirmed these methods produced alloys with unique magnetic hysteresis, properties modern metallurgy had deemed impossible without industrial furnaces. Museums and universities now display chamber artifacts alongside recordings of the songs and stories that preserved their secrets. At a recent solstice gathering, descendants of the builders rejoined the narrative, performing ceremonies inside the chamber for the first time in centuries. As sunlight struck the central platform, elders chanted verses that aligned with magnetic peaks measured by nearby instruments, a convergence of ancient rhythm and modern data logging. One researcher described it as watching science and spirit shake hands across millennia. This partnership revealed a profound truth. Some knowledge transcends the divide between empirical and sacred. The chamber's builders left no written formulas, but their legacy endured in oral traditions that treated magnetism not as abstract physics, but as a living dialogue with the environment. By welcoming these voices back into the story, science didn't just solve a puzzle, it restored a conversation interrupted by time, proving that the most enduring discoveries often begin with listening. When researchers zoomed out from the desert chamber's magnetic fingerprints, something extraordinary came into focus. Scattered across continents, other ancient sites pulsed with eerily similar anomalies, like fragments of a forgotten global language written in stone and metal. Take Peru's Nazca lines, those colossal geoglyphs etched into the desert floor. For decades, scientists assumed they were purely ceremonial. Then aerial surveys revealed something startling. The lines weren't just art, they were aligned with underground iron deposits, creating subtle but measurable distortions in Earth's magnetic field. Walk across certain glyphs with a compass, and the needle twitches like it did in the desert chamber, as if both cultures were tapping into the same invisible playbook. Then there's the Great Zimbabwe Ruins, where 16th-century towers built without mortar contain magnetic rocks positioned at precise intervals. Local legends speak of stones that pull the sky, and modern instruments confirm it. The structures amplify natural magnetic forces, particularly during lunar eclipses. Halfway across the world, in Poland, medieval churches constructed with lodestone-filled mortar exhibit the same phenomenon. Their altars, often placed where compasses behave erratically, were said to be spots where heaven touched earth. The parallels are too consistent to dismiss. From the Mississippi Valley's serpent mounds to Japan's magnetic shrine stones, cultures separated by oceans and millennia seem to share an unspoken understanding of how to weave magnetism into sacred architecture. What makes these global connections even more compelling are the material similarities. The desert chamber's unique alloys, blends of copper and rare earth metals, find echoes in artifacts from distant lands. The Olmecs crafted magnetic figurines with polarized hemispheres, while Chinese diviners used south-pointing, lodestone spoons centuries before the compass's official invention. Most striking of all, the recurring geometric patterns. Whether it's the chamber's concentric circles, Zimbabwe's elliptical towers, or the Nazca spirals, these cultures arrived at nearly identical designs for manipulating magnetic fields despite having no apparent contact. This isn't just about shared technology, it hints at something deeper, a universal human response to encountering natural forces beyond ordinary perception. Faced with stones that mysteriously attracted metal or compasses that danced under certain stars, these cultures didn't just observe, they experimented, systematized, and ultimately sacralized their findings. The desert chamber might have been one node in a vast, unrecorded network of magnetic exploration, not a coordinated effort, but a spontaneous flowering of curiosity wherever humans encountered these puzzling phenomena. The most tantalizing question isn't whether these sites are connected, it's why the knowledge faded. Did war, climate shifts, or cultural collapses sever these threads of understanding? Or was magnetism, like electricity in the Dark Ages, deemed too potent to be left unguarded, reserved for initiates who took its secrets to their graves? As researchers map more of these magnetic hotspots, a new narrative emerges, not of isolated genius, but of a planet where countless cultures listen to the same silent forces. each interpreting the whispers through their own lens until the desert wind, the jungle humidity, or the march of time erased all but the stones themselves. Recreating the chamber's magnetic effect seemed straightforward at first until researchers hit a wall of hidden complexities. Early experiments with identical materials and alignments produced only faint echoes of the original anomalies, leaving teams puzzled. The culprit, Earth itself. Unlike the static conditions in a lab, our planet's magnetic field drifts over centuries, its poles wandering unpredictably. The chamber's builders calibrated their design to a geomagnetic profile that no longer exists, tuning their architecture to a celestial rhythm that's since shifted. Modern teams realized they weren't just rebuilding a structure, they were chasing a moving target, trying to sync ancient engineering with a planet that refuses to stand still. Material degradation added another layer of frustration. The chamber's alloys, once meticulously blended, had undergone subtle chemical changes over millennia. Exposure to moisture, temperature fluctuations, and even microbial activity altered their conductivity in ways impossible to fully reverse. One team spent months trying to replicate the original copper lodestone composites, only to discover that modern smelting techniques, despite their precision, couldn't perfectly mimic the fortuitous impurities ancient methods introduced. These flaws, it turned out, played a crucial role in the metal's magnetic behavior, acting like natural amplifiers lost to time. Then there was the challenge of celestial timing. The chamber's most dramatic effects relied on solstice alignments calculated for an astronomical calendar millennia out of date. Precession, the gradual wobble of Earth's axis, means the stars no longer occupy the same positions relative to the chamber's sightlines. Researchers had to account for 26,000 years of cosmic drift just to approximate the original conditions. Even then, atmospheric differences, ancient air clarity versus modern pollution, affected how sunlight interacted with the metals, altering the intensity of thermoelectric responses. Some teams attempted workarounds, using electromagnets to simulate historical field strength or laser scanners to recreate precise solar angles. But these high-tech solutions felt like cheating, straying from the chamber's core mystery: how ancient builders achieved such precision with only natural tools. A breakthrough came when a materials scientist, inspired by traditional metalworking songs preserved in local oral histories, experimented with cyclical heating and cooling techniques described in the lyrics. The resulting alloys, though still imperfect, came closer to the originals than any lab-forged replica, proof that some knowledge lives not in blueprints, but in the rhythms of cultural memory. The greatest lesson wasn't in perfect replication, but in humility. Each failed attempt revealed new layers of sophistication in the original design: subtle material choices, micro-adjustments to stone placements, even acoustic properties that may have stabilized magnetic fluctuations. What initially seemed like crude experimentation now appeared as a masterclass in working with rather than against nature's variables. The chamber's builders didn't just understand magnetism, they danced with it, adapting their techniques to Earth's ever-changing song in ways modern science is only beginning to hear. Theoretical models bridging ancient ingenuity and modern physics began taking shape as researchers mapped the chamber's magnetic anomalies. At Cambridge, a team led by Dr. Elena Voss proposed the resonant alignment hypothesis, a framework suggesting the builders exploited natural harmonics between Earth's geomagnetic field and the chamber's metallic lattice. Their simulations showed how the concentric stone rings could act like acoustic lenses for magnetism, focusing subtle planetary fluctuations into detectable distortions. One key insight came from material science: the chamber's copper alloys, when heated by solstice sunlight, formed temporary flux bridges that amplified local field strength by up to 40%. These weren't accidental effects, they were engineered phenomena, leveraging principles we now recognize in quantum materials and metamaterials. Meanwhile, geophysicists in Tokyo uncovered another layer to the mystery. Their models revealed that the chamber's underground magnetite deposit didn't just provide raw material, it created a feedback loop with the architecture above. Like a piano string vibrating in sympathy with a tuning fork, the mineral-rich bedrock responded to celestial alignments, pulsing energy back through the copper networks in predictable cycles. This explained why compass anomalies peaked during solstices. The entire system, from stars to stones, functioned as a synchronized circuit. What ancient builders perceived as cosmic harmony, modern equations framed as precision electromagnetics. The most provocative model emerged from a collaboration between historians and plasma physicists. They noted striking parallels between the chamber's geometric patterns and plasma confinement structures in fusion reactors. Both systems use carefully arranged conductors to manipulate invisible forces, whether containing superheated gases or channeling terrestrial magnetism. This led to the terrestrial tokamak theory. The chamber might have been an attempt to stabilize and study naturally occurring electromagnetic plasma, the kind generated during solar storms or auroral events. Ancient observers could have interpreted these luminous phenomena as divine manifestations, then sought to recreate them through architecture. These models share a common revelation. The chamber represents an empirical science encoded in stone rather than equations. Where modern physicists use superconducting coils and supercomputers, the builders employed lodestone and celestial calculus. Both approaches, separated by millennia, arrive at the same truth, that magnetism isn't just a force to observe, but a language to converse with. The stones don't just whisper secrets, they invite us to reconsider where knowledge truly resides. The desert chamber's magnetic secrets didn't just rewrite history, they shattered academic silos, forcing experts from wildly different fields to speak the same language. Picture this, a physicist hunched over spectral analysis data beside an archaeologist brushing dust from a 2,000-year-old copper wire, while a materials scientist cross-referenced results with oral histories recorded by anthropologists. This wasn't just teamwork, it was an intellectual revolution, proving that the most stubborn mysteries yield only when disciplines collide. Take the puzzle of the chamber's solstice alignments. Archaeologists initially catalogued them as ceremonial markers, until physicists ran simulations showing how sunlight striking specific metals at those exact angles generated measurable currents. Engineers then recreated the chamber's layout using period-appropriate tools, revealing the builders likely used water reflections or smoke plumes to calibrate alignments with shocking precision. Meanwhile, historians scouring neglected texts found medieval Arab scholars describing similar techniques in desert observatories, a clue that this knowledge survived longer than anyone guessed. Each revelation was like turning a kaleidoscope, the same fragments arranging into new patterns depending on whose eyes were looking. The collaboration sparked unexpected breakthroughs beyond the chamber itself. Geophysicists adapted archaeological mapping techniques to study ocean floor magnetism, while metallurgists applied ancient alloy recipes to develop more sustainable electronics. One linguist even decoded previously obscure cuneiform symbols by comparing them to the chamber's geometric patterns, realizing they represented early concepts of electromagnetic polarity. These weren't just happy accidents, they were proof that dividing knowledge into rigid categories blinds us to connections that transcend time and discipline. What made this partnership so transformative was how it redefined expertise. engineers accustomed to supercomputers learned to value indigenous oral traditions as highly as lab data, recognizing that songs preserving metalworking techniques contained empirical wisdom refined over generations. Conversely, anthropologists embraced quantum magnetometers, tools that revealed subtleties in the chamber's design invisible to the naked eye. The project's most profound lesson wasn't about ancient technology, it was about humility. When a materials scientist admitted that a 3,000-year-old alloy stumped modern replication methods, or when a physicist conceded that celestial alignments they dismissed as myth proved mathematically precise, it underscored how much every field still has to learn. This interdisciplinary model is now rippling across research globally. Teams studying the Nazca lines have incorporated aerospace engineers to analyze their electromagnetic properties, while historians of medieval cathedrals collaborate with acousticians to unravel their sonic secrets. The chamber proved that no single discipline holds a monopoly on truth, that magnetic stones and oral traditions and quantum physics can all be threads in the same tapestry. As we stand on the brink of rediscovering lost technologies, one truth emerges: the future of exploration belongs to those brave enough to let their expertise collide. The Desert Burial Chamber stands as more than just an archaeological wonder. It's a silent conversation across millennia, a reminder that human curiosity has always burned brightly, even in the shadows of forgotten ages. What makes this discovery so extraordinary isn't just the sophistication of its magnetic manipulations, but the way it forces us to reconsider the entire timeline of innovation. We often picture progress as a straight road, with each generation building on the last, but the chamber whispers a different story, one of flashes of brilliance, lost and rediscovered, as if humanity's understanding of the natural world ebbs and flows like tides. Think about the tools we use today: smartphones, satellites, medical imaging, all reliant on our mastery of invisible forces like magnetism. Now consider the chamber's builders, who achieved similar feats with stones and copper, aligning their knowledge with the rhythms of the cosmos. They may not have had equations or circuit boards, but their intuition and observation led them to engineer structures that still baffle modern scientists. This isn't about romanticizing the past, it's about recognizing that genius isn't bound by era or technology. It's a spark that can ignite anywhere, anytime, given enough curiosity and perseverance. What's equally humbling is how much we might still not know. For every chamber we uncover, how many more lie buried beneath deserts or jungles, their secrets waiting to rewrite history? And what if some of these lost technologies hold solutions to modern challenges: sustainable energy, material science, even medicine? The chamber's passive magnetic systems, honed over generations without depleting resources, offer a blueprint for innovation that works with nature rather than against it. In an age of climate crisis and resource scarcity, that's not just fascinating, it's urgent. But perhaps the chamber's greatest gift is the way it connects us to our shared human legacy. Long before labs or textbooks, people stood under the same stars we do, puzzling over the same forces, driven by the same hunger to understand. Their methods were different, their language poetic rather than technical, but their goal was identical: to unravel the mysteries of the world around them. That thread of curiosity stretches unbroken from the chamber's builders to the researchers studying it today, and to you watching this video right now. As we close this chapter, the invitation remains open. What other forgotten knowledge waits to be rediscovered? How might the past illuminate our future? The chamber doesn't just belong to archaeologists or physicists, it belongs to all of us, a testament to what happens when humanity dares to ask, what if? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Have you encountered other examples of ancient innovation that defy expectations? And if you're hungry for more deep dives into history's unsolved puzzles, hit subscribe. The next discovery might be just around the corner, and you won't want to miss it.